Hello survivors and welcome to First Aid Spray, a Resident Evil podcast by fans for fans. This is episode 7 of the show and today we'll be making a start on our profile series, examining every appearance of key Biohazard characters. Today we focus on STAR's Bravo team medic Rebecca Chambers. My name is Psyniac, you can just call me Psy, and joining me on the panel this week, to most he's Fire Button Steve, to some he's Facebook Steve, and to a select few he's known as simply Hacker Man. It's Steve Valance.
Oh god, the memes! Hello everybody.
And making his debut as a core part of the podcast, First Aid Spray's first ever guest panellist, he is to Rebecca Chambers as the green herb is to the red herb. It's James, aka Moist Owlette.
Hello everyone.
This episode of the podcast is being recorded live in the First Aid Spray Discord server, which you can join now to hear unedited podcasts and contribute to the conversation in the text chat, as well as talk to us and other Resident Evil fans about the series. It's also a good place to put yourself forward for the file readings, to appear in the show, and to ask questions for our Bitesize Discussion segment. You can find a link to the server in the description of the podcast and on our social media accounts. Before we get into the first segment of this podcast, I just wanted to extend a proper welcome to Mr. Moist Owlette, who was on episode 1 doing a file reading, and we've mentioned him many times over the course of the show thus far, and on Discord and our social medias and stuff, because he and Steve, as we've said before, have been Let's Playing a lot of Resident Evil over the last 6 months. Do you guys want to go into that a little bit more?
Basically it boils down to, I think it was like September last year, James? It feels like a good while ago, right?
Yeah.
And James is like, I really want to do some YouTube stuff. And I'm like, well, the remake of Resident Evil 2 is coming and you don't know much about the franchise. Would you like to go through with me? This is a Cliff Notes version. How long is it? And I went very long, and there we go. And I think it was a case of we did a director's cut first to see how it would go, and we had a lot of fun doing it. And from there, we carried on. That's pretty much how it went, right, James?
Yeah, it's been a ride because I've never touched the Resident Evil series before September. And, that's a lie. I touched Resident Evil 3, I played it for an hour, and then it scared me when I was only 13 years old, and I put it down. So that's the only experience I have and Resident Evil 4 on the Wii, which is far superior, Steve.
Sure, I am sure it is.
So if you watch our Let's Play series, you'll understand quite a lot of things like that I just said. I mentioned it quite a lot during our Resident Evil 4 playthrough.
I'd say the goal is to go through at least all the main series, but for those who, if you're more of a classic-orientated Resident Evil fan right now, we've done the original games, and I think we've just stopped. On the timeline-wise, our last one would be Code Veronica, although we've done 1, 2, 3, Resident Evil 4. No, 4 would be. So Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, Code Veronica, 4, and then we did the remakes and 0. So we've still got 5, 6, and 7 to go.
Indeed.
Still debating on how we're going to approach 5. It's probably going to be co-op of some description. So if you like your YouTube silliness, and I will put it out there's a content warning, there will be a lot of swearing. We are very unfiltered, very profane, and if you're not into that kind of thing, I'm not going to be mad if you stay away.
There's dark humor there, there's light humor there, there's all kinds of humor, really, and it gets a little bit silly. But if you're looking for professional gameplay, you probably do not want to watch us. But Steve is very good, though. Steve is very good at the original games, right? I don't care what you say you are, right? He's very good at the original games, okay? So if you want to watch someone who's played them tens, hundreds of times, right? Someone who's very good at them, knows all the placements, which gives us time to actually just talk about nonsense, then, give us a watch.
Still can't beat Psy's speedrun record, though.
Keep working on it, it's fine. Speaking as a fan, it's been a really cool series to watch. Sort of a combination of someone who, like James just said, knows the games really well, and someone who has very little experience with them, because you get really different perspectives on stuff. And it must have been a whirlwind of a 6 months for you, James, like having zero experience and now having been witness to and played some of these games, and now you're on a podcast about it.
It is pretty insane. Like it's always a bit strange for me because I love horror games, But I think when they came out, I was just a little bit too young, and I was a little bit too scared of them to actually dive in. So then I just forgot about them. And then, when I got in touch with Steve about it, that was when I was like, no, I really want to get into them. I really want to know what the story is, because
I did give you the warning. This is going to be a long, deep, there's lots of stuff going on kind of thing as well.
You did. And I'm a super lore buff. I love knowing lore and it to make sense. And I know there are some continuity problems with the games. I still feel like they tie together well enough to keep me interested, and that's why I keep doing them. And that's why I keep wanting to keep doing them with Steve.
So you're in a very privileged position because you get to experience all these. I mean, we already talked about this on the series, but basically for the podcast listeners, James obviously didn't come to Remake first. He went to Remake 2 first, and getting that whole point of view across of someone who has seen the second game's remake and then comes back to see the first one and stuff like that. It's very interesting to hear. Not to float our own boats or anything, but you might like it.
Indeed. So obviously, you're a big fan of Rebecca, which is why I wanted to bring you in for this show. Profile as a series, and we'll get onto it in a bit, is one of those things that we've had since the beginning. It was like an idea. This would be a great format for different episodes. And Rebecca was just a good pick because she has various different appearances over the years. She's not limited to one or two, but she's also not got a crazy amount of stuff that we'd hunt down for some of the more major characters. So it was really, just a coming together of all these great things that Rebecca would be a good place to start. And that one of the earliest sort of goings on in the Let's Play series was James's, falling for Rebecca.
Oh, yeah.
Hashtag waifu and all that.
I really did, and I don't know why, because she's not really my type. But I think it was because of a preface that Steve said at the beginning of Resident Evil. I don't think you remember saying it, Steve, but you said something about her having a tragic kind of past, but it wasn't tragic in the normal sense of losing parents or losing.
No, I just said she's had a rough day beforehand, which is
I think somebody else said that as well, and I was like, I'm really interested in that. I do love a tragic past, and then I seen what she was like in Resident Evil, the director's cut, and I really liked her because you could tell even with the voice acting back then, even with the limited animations in the game, you can tell she's trying to deal with stuff. Mm-hmm. She's trying to deal with a lot of things. But we'll get onto that in a bit.
Yeah, I think I just put the cart before the horse there. So before we go any further, let's get into our first segment, which is, of course, the news.
Okay, so our one bit of news this week is that in a series of tweets, leaker Dusk Golem reports that the Resident Evil 3 remake is being developed externally. He also says that the series will be having annual releases for the foreseeable future, with Resident Evil 8 arriving next gen.
So, I think we said before on the show that we don't want to report on every rumour, but because we're light on news, we should probably go into this. And I think this has been a big thing that people are talking about, so we should at least address it. And we have reported on what Dusk Golem has said previously, because he seems to have reliable sources. But of course, take this as, somebody's heard this. May or may not be true, might be nonsense, might be false information put out there to weed out this source, which does happen now and then. But Dusk Golem put out a very long thread of tweets the night before Resident Evil's 23rd anniversary, talking about cut content from Resident Evil 6, 7 and Remake 2. And at the end, he teased some stuff about the future, so I'll just read a little bit of that verbatim. He says, "The series will be kinda unofficially almost annual for the next few years, though of course as game development goes, anything could be delayed. For example, RE8 got a bit delayed, and I can say to you now that you shouldn't expect it until next gen is on the table. What is on the table is Remake 3, but Remake 3 is not what a lot of people are probably going to expect. It's not being made by the same team that made Remake 2. In fact, it's not even being internally developed by Capcom Division 1 at all. Who is developing it is very interesting, but for another day. It will be coming about a lot sooner than people are probably expecting," and then he goes on to close out his thoughts there. So Remake 3, he says, is coming soon, and it's not being developed internally. Any opinions on this?
See, hearing the words external developer, it could go one of two ways when it comes to Capcom. You either get something like Dead Rising 2, or you get something like Dead Rising 4. And I know, watching Sai reviews it, that you kind of enjoyed Dead Rising 4.
It's
kind of.
But I'll tell you what, I prefer Dead Rising 2, so I see your point.
Yeah, and then there's obviously, personally, I'm not against it, but the whole Devil May Cry DMC thing and how that was made by Ninja Theory, and people were very polarized by, shall we say, rewritten Dante and things. So, Mr. Moist Owlette's unfortunately been dealing with a lot of that on his YouTube. But I think that if it's the right developer and they clearly have a passion for it, great. But I don't know yet. I would need more information. It would be definitely more of a reassurance if it was the Resident Evil 2 remake team. But if they're working on RE8, then I would argue RE8 is more important than a 3 remake. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it's one of those things where they have the engine, they kind of have the blueprint now. I can see why they would kind of pass that on to someone else while they focus on another project. If, like this says, we're going to be getting a game around about every year, which is going to be interesting. But also, at the same token, we've had this experience before with games in the series being made by external developers. Operation Raccoon City. Yeah, that's the worry, isn't it?
But all right, okay. Raccoon City had a great idea, and it had the ARG stuff, which I would like to get a full file of the Inserted Evil stuff. But the FMV was, it looked like the spirits within if it was a Resident Evil movie, and yet enjoyable. And then the game was complete enough to tosh.
That's where it comes down, isn't it? It's what are they going to do with the gameplay? Who knows? It's dejected size all around.
Nah, it's too early to call it, I think, personally.
James, do you have any opinions on this one?
I don't know enough about the developers to really know. I just did with Steve there because of I feel like it can go two ways, can't it? Like for developers that try to touch a game, because it can go the right way, like Alien Isolation did with Creative Assembly, or it can go the wrong way, like it did with DMC Devil May Cry. And I personally like DMC Devil May Cry, but I know a lot of people didn't. So it's a tough one. It's a gamble. I feel sorry for developers because it's a gamble.
Oh man, can you imagine if Resident Evil 3 is being made by Creative Assembly? That would be amazing.
It's the universe now.
Yeah,
you're right. Though
just putting that thought there,
the gamble is a thing, because if it does go badly, then those developers are going to get essentially crucified, which just sucks.
Just bring out Ninja Theory again and go, it's these guys, and then. That's not going to go down well. Oh dear.
But it hasn't destroyed Ninja Theory. They still came back. They gave us Senua's Sacrifice, right?
Yeah,
I think, and that was an amazing game. It doesn't destroy a developer, but I do feel for them because in this day and age, it is risky. I would be excited for an RE3, but like Steve just said, there's not a lot of information to go on. Other than that it's happening or maybe happening.
Yeah.
So it's
watch this space, I suppose.
Yeah, wait until we'll talk about the bucket of sand and the live action film stuff again at some point too, I would imagine. So we'll keep you updated.
Yeah, definitely. Right, okay. Well, that's the entirety of the news for this week. Let's move on to the first edition of Profile. And now, reading an excerpt from Rebecca's diary from the Brady Games Guide to Resident Evil 0, Sammy Bold, who you can follow on Twitter at Sammy_Bold.
July 23rd, 1998, 10:25 p.m. I'm so excited. It's my first mission as field medic on the STARS Bravo team. I certainly hope my comrades can benefit from my assistance. But our mission is disturbing. Murderers roam the forests? Perhaps we can finally answer that question and solve this case for the benefit of the community. Still, I wonder if it was a good idea for Captain Marini to split us up after we discovered that wrecked MP vehicle and those dead soldiers. If there really is an escaped military convict in these woods, we might be unable to assist him individually. Wait, what is that object beyond the trees? Is that a train? Why is it parked out here in the middle of the woods? If we are to get to the bottom of this case, I have to be brave and investigate.
So, our main topic on this particular show, as stated numerous times, is Rebecca Chambers. We're going to go through her entire history in the Biohazard series canonically, starting with some background history. Resident Evil Wikia will start us off, and they said Rebecca graduated college at the young age of 18. Her expertise in chemistry and medicine earned her a position in the Special Tactics and Rescue Service. She was assigned as rear security and medic for the Bravo team. She became the unit's youngest and most inexperienced member, which made her quite nervous around her teammates. Because of this, she was eager to please and has been known to take on any task assigned to her without hesitation. Project Umbrella's profile has her as recruited as team medic despite lack of field experience, specifically for her knowledge in chemistry. Due to her young age, fellow officer Richard Aiken was charged with looking after her. To show that she was a medical professional, she was equipped with a red and white nurse wristwatch, equipped with a pulse meter for monitoring injured individuals. She also joined the RPD intramural basketball team. So that's the setup for Rebecca. She is, as previously stated, the rookie of the team, the most inexperienced, and whilst it's very obvious that the point of Resident Evil is everyone being thrown in the deep end of this crazy situation, she probably is the most ill-prepared for it. Steve, any thoughts on the background information?
Well, yeah, it's funny you mentioned the RE Wikia because I did a bit of research before the podcast. I know, research me, try not to faint. And she was born in 1980, which means if she graduated college in 18, that's still 98. So she literally, same year she graduates college, she's joined the STARS unit and then goes through all of this.
That's very true, actually.
That's a very busy year. That's a very, very busy year.
From extreme highs to extreme lows.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of child prodigies in the Resident Evil universe. Let's not beat around the bush here, but that's pretty special right there. I think Rebecca as a whole, being the medic and also apparently a basketball team member and part of a paramilitary SWAT team, it's a decent thing to achieve at age 18. She's younger than Claire is.
That's
only by a year.
Yeah, that's video game character logic, isn't it? It's, you're in an expert military squad and you're 18 years old. Okay, we hired you regardless of the fact that you've had no military experience. Video games.
Just operate a grenade launcher.
Yeah.
I think she was brought into it. I think much like a med is brought into the armed forces. They are trained. Right, but a new med, when they go into the armed forces in the real world, they're expected to treat, and that's what they do. And it's just really unfortunate for her that she had to go through a whole viral infection at the same time.
I guess there's some sort of logic, maybe it's a stretch, some headcanon perhaps, that they hired someone based on their knowledge in chemistry because they knew of advances in chemical warfare and stuff that were going on at that time in the universe, I guess.
Knowing her briefness, when you break it down with the whole, she has just finished college and then she gets picked up by the RPD to be probably headhunted by Wesker, considering he has the creepy photo.
Yeah, of course.
It's likely it's something in his plans for the whole testing situation because, they had to throw the STARS unit at the bioweapons inside the mansion. Maybe he picked Rebecca so that they need a medical expert on team to try and maybe get data on how they will treat injuries or something. I'm reaching a bit, but do you understand what I kind of mean?
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. I mean, I'm fairly sure it's fact that Wesker picked every STARS member specifically by himself. I'm fairly sure that's true. So now that you mention it, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think in a couple of the games as well, and the stage, the play, she was mentioned as being a genius in this field. I believe, as well. So,
yeah.
that would make complete sense for Wesker.
Indeed. So, moving to the first appearance canonically for her, which is, I guess, really the most important one. It's the one where Rebecca is the lead character, in a way her only starring role, if you like. Resident Evil 0, which takes place in 1998. Rebecca was portrayed by Riva De Paulo in this version. And of course, this is the story of her being sent in with Bravo team into the Arklay Forest after various reports of grisly murders and all that business. Gets caught up with escaped convict Billy Cohen, getting on board the Ecliptic Express Umbrella train and uncovering secrets as to the formation of Umbrella and the creation of the T-virus and that kind of thing. So this is the earliest game in the canon. So I suppose in a way that's kind of nice for her to be at the forefront of the first ever experience, the first ever outbreak committed to release, at least.
First STARS member to shoot a zombie, technically.
Yes, yeah, that's
Wesker
true.
hasn't shot anything yet. Yeah.
So, obviously, being the big Rebecca fan, Mr. Owlette, how do you feel about Resident Evil 0 and Rebecca's appearance in that?
Rebecca Chambers in Resident Evil 0 is exactly how I expected her to be in a kind of up to date game. Like when I seen her in director's cut, well, what you could see anyway. I still got through who she was, and then when I listened to her and watched Steve play her in Resident Evil 0, I got her. Like I was even more in love with her in Resident Evil 0. Like the game so much I wasn't too hot on, right? But her and Billy Cohen as well. He's actually the first sidekick I've actually liked through the entire thing. But Rebecca, I really like her. She's solid. Like I think in the later games you learn that she's really trying to keep to her career as a medical professional by preserving life. She doesn't want to kill things, even though they are undead, unless her life is in danger, which it was in 0 constantly. But yeah, if it is in danger, she will eradicate. Right, she will do what she can. But she tries her best, even in 0, to not kill things. But she has to anyway because it's her life.
Yeah, that's fair. They try and strike that balance between having a strong playable character and Rebecca's original sort of personality. Not saying that she didn't have strong elements to her in the original Resident Evil or anything, but being more of the caring, I don't want to say moral is maybe not the right word, but that kind of character. For me, I think they went a little bit too far in one direction. I think she might be a little bit too strong, and this ties into some other appearances from her. I don't think she freaks out, or at least script-wise, she doesn't have enough chances to kind of freak out about what's going on. You get that much more in other appearances. And I understand, obviously, perhaps they didn't want to have it so that she was relying on a man kind of thing. You have Billy as the strong, capable one and Rebecca freaking out too much. That's not a good look either, so it's a really tough balance to get. But for me, 0 is a bit odd because, yeah, she seems more forthcoming and capable in this than later appearances, which is slightly odd. Steve, how did you feel about this one?
See, I'm torn because I kind of feel like 0 Rebecca is my favourite Rebecca. You know, I feel I can understand your point, Si, but I feel like it's almost like if going through Rebecca's entire across the franchise kind of role, it feels like in 0 and maybe a bit in the start of Vendetta, when she's by herself or she's in the position of authority, she can let loose and be confident and stuff. But whenever there's someone else around, she will back down and defer to them. You know what I mean? After 0, you've got the nightmare scenarios, and then obviously Resident Evil 1 and so on. She's always in secondary role. She's always the person slightly behind the main character, so to speak. Whereas in 0, she's on her own. And she has to, because Billy is a criminal, you know, she doesn't know much about him until later on in the game, and she has to basically sort of assert her authority over him. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, the whole, as Officer Chambers to you, don't call me little girl, and so on. You know.
She also, excuse me. She also this is her first assignment. Like Zero was her first assignment, right? So all of her training kicks in, right? But you still got that. I felt you still had that Rebecca from Director's Cut in there, Resident Evil 1, right? You still had her in there, but this moment where she had to fight for her life, as Steve said, she was on her own. She had to kick herself in the ass. But as soon as, as you say, actually, I didn't actually think about that. But as soon as like a more authoritative person comes by, she goes to them, asks for their opinion, because she is the inferior. So I think she just, and that's I think what Psyniac just said as well. I think like if they tried to make her a little bit like she was in Director's Cut and a little bit like Vendetta, although I like her in Vendetta because she's more of a civilian. I think there would have been uproar with it.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I think that's one thing that's really great about her character as well, is that she doesn't automatically fit into the indestructible role. She's not the be-all and end-all. And I think that's okay for not every character to be sort of butting heads with each other about who's going to be in control and who's going to be the leader. I think that's actually shows a different side to everything, because there's several characters in this franchise and in lots of things. The action man / woman, that's capable in every way. And is always top of the totem pole. And you're totally right. If there's someone else there to defer to, be it an equal or a superior, and it makes sense, especially in this example where, as James just said, it's her first day as well. But in the situation that she is with Billy, she does have to take a few steps to say, well, no, I'm in charge here, because even if she is kind of, you can tell, and props to the performance, you can tell that she's not completely comfortable in that role, being like, hey, you listen to me. She's not had the experience stepping up like that. So fair play on that point. And in terms of Billy as well, I really like the fact that they didn't go down a love story sort of route with this. We've had that in other games where two characters fall in love over the course of one night, and it's nonsense.
There is a massive smile. There's a massive smile on my face right now, because that is I think I said that to you, Steve, didn't I? Right at the end of Zero, I said, oh my god, we don't have a love triangle, some kind of love interest. I'm so happy.
Yeah.
They just go from two characters that have to coexist to actually caring about each other in a friendship sort of way, in a cooperative sort of way. Even the fact that she has information about Billy, which may or may not be true, about him murdering all these people, she can judge his character for what it actually is, and then they have that conversation where she says to him, tell me the truth, I can take it, because she's not, she's grappling with what she's read and what she's experiencing, having to assist and be assisted by this guy in this nightmare of a situation.
They could have gone for like the really easy Hollywood route, right, of her just being ditzy and stupid, but they didn't. Like, she's an intelligent woman, and it tells you, the games tell you that she's an intelligent woman, and she uses those smarts, to tell that Billy is not as bad as everyone's saying he is. And I like that, because she uses her brain.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
So even with my gripes a little bit, we got the weekly polls section on our Discord server, where we ask our community various Resident Evil subjects every week. And this week, of course, podcast-centric poll was, which is your favourite Rebecca Chambers appearance, and Zero came out on top. So that's fair enough. I can completely understand it. She also gets the most screen time here, and I don't mean that in an excuse kind of way, but it gives her room to kind of expand on that character and show more of it than we've had before. One minor touch that I love in this game is the piano thing, where she can play the piano, but she's not. It would help if she had the music in front of her, which is obviously a nice little through line to the original game.
Yeah, I know. I was kind of harsh on the podcast, the last podcast we did about Resident Evil Zero when we were talking about the Switch ports, and I kind of feel like as much as I don't like Zero, Rebecca and Billy are like two of the most human characters cut across in a main Resident Evil game. I mean, all right, Remake 2's got its moments now, but I think they have more human moments in the way that Billy just struts on and like is now a maestro with the keyboard, this military killing machine.
Yeah.
Whereas Rebecca, who has now been established as a child prodigy, can't play keys worth a damn. It's very charming.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, it has a few slip-ups every now and then in terms of characters. Like Billy's first appearance is very weird because he's like, "Oh, I've been fantasizing about me, have you?" It's not congruent with like the rest of his character, but hey ho.
Yeah.
And obviously the villain is ridiculous, but there you go.
I completely agree with that. And I during the Let's Play, I said to Steve, "Oh, we haven't got another one of these, do we?"
I had to tell him in between recordings, he gets better. He does. He gets better.
Steve was really hyping him up, and then he did actually grow on me. I just wish they didn't open it up with that.
Yeah,
it kind of lowered it.
Yeah, that's really the only part where it slips up. I think the rest of it's pretty good in terms of his characterization, like the crescendo moment, like I said, where they have that conversation about Billy's history. I think by that point, it's fairly easy to be warmed up to him and them as an existing unit. Any other thoughts on Zero before we move on?
Do we talk about the parallels in Umbrella Chronicles? Should we touch on that?
Yeah, if you like.
There's still some like character banter of the same incident. All right. First and foremost, the voice actress for Rebecca, not the best, but the actual like portrayal of her, where she's like being very dominant, like, "Do you need help? No. Do you?" Where she's very like dismissive of Billy being sassy back to her. She will sass him straight back. I do love that about the Umbrella Chronicles version of the Train Derailment. Other than that, I haven't really got much to say other than probably my favorite version of Rebecca for the most part.
Yeah, same here. Resident Evil Zero is my favorite representation of her. She's just the most human, and I think she sets up her story. She sets up her story quite well with Zero, and I don't think I have anything else to say about it.
Fair enough. Well, let's bridge the gap between Zero and Resident Evil with Nightmare, which are the two scenarios that can be unlocked in Umbrella Chronicles, the rail shooter, the first of the two rail shooter games. Obviously, this, of course, takes place also in 1998, I guess during the daytime or hours. Yeah, it must have been hours before Resident Evil, now that I think about it. And
because it's dark. It's still dark
outside.
Yeah,
and considering how it ends as well, that makes total sense. So, yes, it's the following evening, and it stars Rebecca alongside Richard as the playable characters, making their way from the residence or guardhouse, however you prefer, into the mansion and encountering Yawn. It doesn't 100% fit with the canon, partly because it sort of implies that Rebecca is some sort of weird soothsayer who can see the future, but because she has a dream about a creature that she's not encountered at that point. But there you go. Portrayed by Stephanie Shea, how do we feel about the Nightmare scenarios? Owlette, why don't you kick us off with this one?
I mean, I didn't play the game, but I watched it, and it, as you say, the very strange dream sequence kind of took me out a little bit. But when she actually got up and I heard her and her mannerisms and stuff, I immediately, okay, Rebecca's back. There she is. I did get her, and she even made some decisions as well, which was nice to see through from what I watched. Because when she's got someone else with her, as we said earlier, she tends to turn to the other person, unless that person is an inferior. She tends to turn to that person and say, "What should we do now?" In Umbrella Chronicles, she doesn't. She makes decisions. She's like, "No, we need to go down here now." And Richard is like, "Why?" Right? And just get down here. She's quite authoritative. And it's nice to see that with her.
And when you break it down, she's been dealing with these monsters maybe more than Richard has, because obviously Zero has just occurred. And Richard might have just been doling around in the mansion going, oh, this is a nice dusty house filled with zombies. And she's fought like God knows how many like prototype monsters and hunters at this point. But, so I get what you're saying though, James.
Yeah. It's what I was saying. It's like it's really nice to see. It's really nice to see her kind of, just take charge and tell them how it is. And yeah, you bring up a good point. At this point, she's been through more than anyone has. Other than the boys, the big boys behind it all. But she's been through more than anyone, and she is taking it in a stride at this point, through Zero and through Umbrella Chronicles.
See, that's interesting, because for me, the most striking things about the Nightmare scenarios is the moments of doubt that she has about their survival and moments like that. There is a particular part in Nightmare 2 where she almost has a complete freak out and, we're totally screwed kind of thing. And it dawns on her that they might be the only members of STARS left alive, or at least Bravo team, which I quite like, because for me that matches what I thought of her original personality more. She has that moment of like panic, presses on regardless, but it's there, and I like the fact that they actually show that that kind of thing where she's freaking out, but the survival instincts are pushing on.
Do you think it's like seeing from Zero to Nightmare to what we would know as the main Resident Evil game? That Nightmare's the incident where her spirit gets kind of shattered. Then, like where she goes from that to, obviously the end of Nightmare is Yorn has his way with Richard, and that probably just cripples her spirit a bit, which is why she's a little bit more subdued.
It's definitely a way to look at it, I think. Yeah, after all she's been through, she escaped, she survived, and then the very next night, it's all happening again. That's definitely how I feel about it as well.
You said Richard was assigned basically as not a bodyguard, but like someone to keep an eye out for her. So that her protector, so to speak, getting really badly messed up while she's with him. That could knock her confidence down.
Absolutely.
I'm just curious, what was Richard's role? I know this isn't about Richard.
He was their radio. No, he wasn't their radio guy, was he? That was Richard Forrest, or was Forrest marksman?
Forrest is a marksman, but he might also be radio guy. Let me just quickly look up what his technical role is.
Because if we learn his role, then we might have a better understanding.
I'm fairly sure you're right, Steve. Communications expert.
Other than just ouch guy.
Bless Richard though. He didn't see it in remake for Chris's campaign, James, but he got a little bit more screen time in Chris's remake campaign, and he actually sacrificed himself against the sharks. And there's there's like a moment or two where everyone's together and he's like tired or passed out on the bed, and it's nice.
I did see that actually, and it actually surprised me. I was like, oh no, that was a really rough way to go.
Where's my Revelations game about Richard Aiken and the rest of the Bravo team getting whacked?
Well, that game is the game that we all thought Zero was going to be, to be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there you go. I think including Richard in this was a really good call, because A, it's always nice to give some STARS members that don't usually get screen time a little more, to give them more to do. And B, him and Rebecca actually have a kind of cool setup, because they do have that brother-sister sort of dynamic. She's being looked after by him and kind of mentored by him, if you like. And Richard's past before STARS, the reason he joined STARS is he lost a younger sister due to criminal activity, and that's what spurred his interest in that kind of thing. So it all ties together quite nicely there, and as you say, closes up with Richard's imminent demise as we venture into the Spencer Mansion in the original game. So whilst it doesn't connect completely, it's actually a really cool little additional scenario that they didn't even really have to do, but it's really cool that it exists.
It's good that they thought it through and they went through with it. And because I like connections like that.
Yeah,
it's really nice to have a constant flowing story.
It's something that the Chronicle games do pretty well in general. It's just that they'll find a gap where there could be something explained or added to, and they'll put in a little bit of a side story. So,
I'm gonna say the general rule of thumb is if it's in Umbrella Chronicles and it's not, if it's a reenactment of the main game, it's considered non-canon. But if it's not, it is canon now, right?
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
It's a funny state of affairs with the Resident Evil canon in general, but it is funny looking at those games where it's like, yeah, all like the extra bonus stuff, those are canon. The actual core game, not so much.
Yeah. I would argue that Hunk's scenario in Umbrella Chronicles makes much more sense narratively than any of his other ones, including Remake 2 as well. I mean, obviously it's a minigame in the others, but that one feels like it could sort of occur.
Is that in Umbrella or Darkside Chronicles?
That's in Umbrella Chronicles.
Okay.
It's, surprisingly, it's the second to last thing you unlock.
Right.
Same with Ada's Death Door. Yeah, because Ada and Hunk get their stories in the one for Resident Evil 1, 0, and 3, not the one with 2 and Code Veronica, which makes loads of sense, Capcom.
Yeah, it's been a while since I touched Umbrella Chronicles. I should dust that off and have a go through it at some point, but nonetheless. So, let's move on to Rebecca's first ever appearance. Resident Evil 1996. Obviously, again, this also takes place in 1998. Rebecca appeared in Chris's scenario in the main game as the side character, the Barry to Jill, if you like, in Chris's scenario. And this is where we learned about her for the first time and picked up what her personality was. Introduced to her. There's two ways you can meet her depending on where you go first. One is the hallway where Richard was bitten by the snake and all that stuff. And from there, she teams up with Chris to assist him in various different tasks. In this game, she was portrayed by an actor who just went by Linda for the live action segments, and Lynn Harris is her voice performance. So, Steve, why don't you start off Resident Evil 1996? How do you feel about the first ever Rebecca Chambers?
The first ever Rebecca Chambers? She's okay. You know, I'm not going to lie, the voice acting takes me out a little bit. But as a character, she's cool. I think she's still portrayed as more human than every other Resident Evil character at this time, because she messes up. She can't do the piano, as we've already touched on in Resident Evil 0. Having played Zero, if you play Zero and come back to either the remake or the original, though, you always feel like, why is Rebecca struggling with all this stuff? Why she's took down a giant leech monster like this morning, you know? But outside of that, in the context of just purely the game, I mean, she's okay. I kind of feel like Barry's more fun because Barry's got the whole betrayal angle, whereas Rebecca is looking up to Chris the entire time. You know, she's very, I don't want to say in awe, but she's eager to please him. And the second that he's in trouble, she comes a running, which is cool. She's playable as opposed to Barry, though, which is nice. So it gives the player a bit more time to play, you know, a little bit to dabble in something different. Outside of that, though, kind of underwhelmed, for want of a better term. I like the way that she's still shows that she's more prepared, though. I mean, she gets shot and gets back up because she's wearing a bulletproof vest, and Wesker, this master schemer, can't seem to aim for the head.
You can't shoot that beautiful head, Steve.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, she's one of those characters that a lot of people will claim as, oh, he's the annoying character. I know you didn't mean that, and that's... Some people will say that, and that kind of irritates me because I don't feel that way at all. But she out of the choice between her and Barry, I usually play the Jill scenario, so I wonder if that's why. But she does have plenty of her own stuff going on, like you say. There's the whole part where Chris is too stupid to make a chemical, and she's the genius. She's the child prodigy, so she can do that. She can heal Chris as well, which is cool when you go and visit her. And that's cool because that plays.
Learn to play the piano.
Yeah, but that plays into the basics of the character as being this genius chemist and medic. So that's always good. Her writing, just that her writing is all about helping others, so it makes sense.
And I say she's the first STARS member to touch on Umbrella if you play Chris's campaign first as well, isn't she? Because she's got the whole. Most of these things are made by the Umbrella Corporation, and. You know, if you haven't put two and two together at the point you're at the guardhouse or residence. So, that's kind of cool. She's touching on things that everyone should notice from the get-go. But
yeah, in case you might missed files as well, that kind of thing.
With me, I think completely different.
Yeah.
Because I always, actually, when I first heard her, I just instantly fell in love with her character. I don't know why. And I on the Let's Play, it's a joke, but I actually do really like her character. I just sensed there's something else there. There's something else underneath. And I was also prefaced with Steve saying that there was something else going on. I was like, okay, I'm really intrigued. What happened to this woman? What's made her turn into this kind of more timid person? So I was really interested, and then I learned about it, and now I kind of understand, because as you were saying earlier on, Sai, she kind of cracked a little bit. And when Chris came along, it's like, okay, everything's in order, everything's fine, right? That's basically what I got in Resident Evil Director's Cut was, everything's great. Chris is here, Jill's here, Wesker's here, we're going to figure this out, and I was just like, yeah, I can get on with that, because that would kind of be me in that situation. Like, if my superior officer came, I'd be like, all right, this is fine. We've got the reinforcements. We're going to be great, right? And then she started again, and everything started to go down. And then she was like, okay, and now I'm the one who's doing it. I've done this before. I can do it. And then she does it. And I really respect her for that. And knowing from the past 2 games as well, Umbrella Chronicles and Zero, knowing her history, it makes me respect her even more.
That was a good defense. I applaud that. I think, and also as well, she does have a habit of sort of stealing the show at times from Chris. Chris is just sort of like, his character, especially in the first game, really is just sort of dumb meathead guy. Whereas there's more going on with Rebecca, like you say. She can save him from Plant 42 and that kind of thing. It's a great crescendoing moment for her. And Steve just said, she's smart enough to be wearing body armor as well. So there's several moments where, she's the focus for me in a lot of those cutscenes.
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree with that.
How do we feel about the comparison of Resident Evil 96 to 2002, however? Obviously, that's going to be a big one. It's the same kind of thing. Obviously, you've got the same story and all that. Portrayed this time by Hope Levy. How do we feel about it stacking up against the 1996 version?
It's strange. Like, the voice actress performance, it makes me feel like actually very convincing. If you back-to-back Zero in the remake, it feels like I can believe that's how tired I would feel, because she always seems a little bit worn out. I don't mean that in a knock. I mean that the character generally seems fatigued by all the things that are going on around her. Doesn't seem anywhere near as hopeful or as optimistic at times as obviously her Zero, and I would argue a little bit of her original game's counterpart. If you encounter her, for example, when Richard's like on the floor, she's just like, what? Okay. Very, very almost dazed and confused. I kind of like the actual portrayal as it's more human than like the superheroes we've come to know of the Resident Evil franchise over the years. Which, I give it credit. I mean, she feels like out of the whole bunch of the protagonists, we touched on this before, but she's the least superheroic. And she feels very unsuperheroic in the remake. My
note for this is her performance feels very real here. So I'm in 100% agreement with that. And the sort of level of confidence and strength that she shows actually kind of matches up with everything that's gone on before. My favourite moment of this is after she's healed Chris, I think it is. She has the breakdown, which is completely, been building up to this point where she just starts sobbing into his chest and he has to comfort her briefly, and then she swallows it down and gets on with it, which is great, because for me, strength in characters doesn't come from being the god that can just cleave through everything and not care. Strength is about overcoming weakness. This is an inexperienced 18-year-old girl that's gone through ridiculous amounts over the last 36 hours or whatever it is at this point. And so she deserves to have that moment of breakdown. I think this is probably my personal favourite, but I have a feeling that Mr. Owlette disagrees with this one.
Yeah. She, looking at it from a different perspective, and not looking at it from a perspective of... Coming from my life, I've gone through many things, and have to change the way I do things and how I approach things. And I think that's why I can relate to the Rebecca Chambers in 0, UC, and 1, and Resident Evil Director's Cut, because she changes so much and she takes charge, and then she defers, and But in the remake, I couldn't connect with her. I don't know why. She's, as Steve said, she sounded tired. She sounded exhausted. She'd given up. I did like the scene where she puts her head in. She just kind of breaks down. That was a very human scene for me, and it was it was hard to see my baby be sad, right? But seriously, I couldn't. I don't know why. I just couldn't connect with it enough. And it might be because I had played so much with Rebecca in previously and watched a lot previously as well, and I just had this image of her in my mind and who she was, that when I watched / played remake, I couldn't connect with her because I already had an idea of who she was in my head.
That's fair enough. I mean, it is one of those things where it depends when you see media and in what order and stuff like that, and how attached you are. I can completely understand the view that this is a different take on it, and it doesn't feel quite right for some people. My big issue with this, obviously, is the disparity between this and 0. These games were both released in the same year. But obviously something like the two teams that were making them, I guess, couldn't be bothered to talk to each other because they don't really fit together. Rebecca's been through all that she's been through, but she doesn't feel the need to bring any of that up, even slightly, even any kind of slight reference or nod. She doesn't say, yeah, by the way, Umbrella doing all this, horrible monsters, T-Virus.
Yeah, I agree with you, Si, and I feel like there has to be a bit of personal headcanoning going on, so to speak. I feel like Resident Evil 0 occurs if the Jill campaign takes place. Right, yeah. If the Jill campaign takes place, Resident Evil 0 occurs, and then Rebecca gets either picked up by Brad or just makes her own way back to the city, and we don't see it.
Right.
But if Resident Evil 0 doesn't take place, then Rebecca doesn't have any idea what's going on, and she just goes with, let's say they don't find the wrecked wagon, and then they go directly to the Spencer mansion. That's the only way. And then the Chris campaign starts. I know that's gonna the canon debate of RE1 and all the rest of it is a nightmare, but it's a way to unwrangle some things. It's a way for Barry to be there and go, hey, here's my revolver. And then Revelations 2 drops the bombshell that the whole ceiling sequence with Jill happened. You were almost a Claire sandwich.
Yeah,
but. I mean, could we have been dealing with 2 different Resident Evil metaverses this entire time? There's the Chris timeline, and then there's the Jill timeline, and then everyone goes, no!
See, that's the thing. I love when people bring up, but later game references this, so this must happen. But you can just as easily say, yes, but Biohazard the stage shows a flashback that shows Rebecca and Chris in the mansion.
Exactly.
So there's flaws there.
Yeah, the stage is from the Chris timeline. Revelations 2 is from the Jill timeline.
Oh dear. I'll start opening a notepad
3 years
now.
later, we're still debating this.
Yeah, better start writing this down.
You understand my reasoning, though, right?
Oh, I do. Yeah. Of course, the general agreed canon with the original game and with 2, to a certain extent, is that key events took place, but the actual gameplay and little bits like this, leave it up to your own imagination, because obviously both Chris and Jill scenarios did actually happen, but they can't actually happen together. It wouldn't make any sense. So there's a third, scenario which combines all of the characters together that we didn't really see. That's the truth of the
which
story.
Which is Umbrella Chronicles. Because there's no Barry.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true, actually.
It's best not to... this is coming from me, but it's best not to overthink those kind of things.
Absolutely.
There was not to just railroad a little, but there was a strange thing I saw the other day where someone mentioned that Umbrella Chronicles is great in that if you look at it from the perspective of Wesker writing it, and he has written Barry out because he's really got a hate boner for the man. That's why everything's occurring, and Barry isn't mentioned at all. And Yeah, that's kind of hilarious, actually. He just hates him
Excellent.
because he got shot.
Hours have passed, and we still can't find a way out of this facility. What was the Umbrella Corporation doing in this foreboding place? Why all the security locks, secret passages, and traps? This seems less like a training facility for new employees and more like a channel house of unspeakable horrors. My sense of dread continues to grow as we encounter more and more members of Umbrella's first investigation unit, turned into creepy zombies. If Umbrella's own personnel had no chance to survive, how can we live through this night? Lieutenant Cohen has proved to be a valuable ally in almost every situation. I will never forget being trapped in that mutant monster's claws. I was sure it was all over. Yet Billy risked his own life to save me. How did he kill all those people? It must be some kind of mistake. I have to find out the truth about him, and I think we also need to find out what happened to the mysterious Dr. Marcus. Did he really disappear, or could he still be here after all these years?
Okay, so next on our list of things to get to is Biohazard the Stage, which is an interesting one because most of the time when you mention this to people, they ask, what are you talking about? Biohazard the Stage is a Japanese stage play that was shown briefly for a little while and was set in the Resident Evil universe around the year 2010 in Western Australia. Rebecca Chambers is a part of the story, also features Chris and Piers before Resident Evil 6 and that kind of thing. This is the first time, I believe, I could be wrong on this front, that Rebecca was portrayed by a Japanese actress in any form, because at this point none of the games had Japanese voice acting, so there's a little tidbit of information perhaps. So Rin Asuka played Rebecca Chambers live action on stage. How do we feel about the stage's interpretation of Rebecca? She is more of a bit part, but she's in it nonetheless, and it does have some information on the big time jump between 98 and 2010.
So, for me, you may say she's a small bit part, Psyniac, but to me, she was a very big one. I was just looking at her. Every time she was on the stage, I was looking at her and seeing what she was doing. I love that they... By the way, I absolutely love the stage, and you all should watch it. If you like Resident Evil, I think you will love the stage.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I don't know if... Do you agree with that?
Oh,
Me? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I kind of enjoyed it. To say I was one of these people who only saw it a couple of days ago, I was surprised at the production values of this thing.
Yeah, it's got a lot of
enjoyed
interesting stuff going on. You know, it sounds like a ridiculous notion, but yeah, well, I'm sure we will definitely do an episode on the stage at some point down the line, because I feel like it deserves it, as it's kind of an unsung piece of media.
But yeah, back to what I was saying with Rebecca, I think she was portrayed very, very well in this, to what I had in my mind of who she was. And watching Vendetta later on, which we're going to talk about later, it made sense as well. I feel like that film took from the stage, actually, quite a lot. And it was nice to see her in a career. You know, like beforehand, you'd see her. She had her armor on. She was basically an army medic in some kind of armed forces, and she was doing her best with what she had. And it just happens again. This poor woman. She has her career, and she's doing very well in it. And then she just starts investigating because something's just not quite right. Because of course. And yeah, I really liked her in it. She was really good, and she keeps to her ideals of trying to preserve life. She does it all the way through the stage. She tries her best not to hurt. She just wants to uncover and let the big boys do all the big work, basically.
Absolutely. It's really interesting, like you say, like they give you so much with so little with her backstory at this point, because it's been so long canonically since we'd seen her. They actually took the time out to clearly think about what they wanted to do with the Rebecca character. This is canon, this whole thing, as far as I know. It doesn't conflict with anything, so there's no reason to believe it isn't. I don't think it's something that Capcom tend to acknowledge, so if you like, it's grey canon at best, but there's no reason why it isn't canon And the fact they bothered to put flashbacks, not just to the fun little part with the original game where they kind of are telling you the story so far, but they show you some years previous where they touch on Rebecca joining the BSAA, being part of an outbreak in Minnesota, and now in 2010 where she's become a temporary science teacher at Philosophy City's university teaching virology, which, yeah, it makes sense and it matches up with later appearances as well. Yeah, like in terms of that kind of stuff, they did a really good job with her.
To put it strangely, that when I was watching the whole thing, by the end of it, I felt like Rebecca is both her character that we see in Vendetta, and she feels like she's a bootleg Ada Wong. Because
Okay.
she's technically in this university to spy on, is it Howard? Which is obviously the espionage bit. She gets wounded, she gets kidnapped, and she also shows up at the end to kill the final baddie with a rocket launcher, which in my mind is very Ada Wong-like. Don't wrong, there are obviously the points where she's looking at her own students and she's like barely able to kill them and stuff like that. That's really cool. And whereas Chris is a militant badass doing his whole fight dance sequence, she's just very humane almost, you know?
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I know. I feel bad that she seems to get kidnapped an awful lot or dragged away, but you know, almost like she's a second stringer to that Sophie girl at times. But without Rebecca in it, there is a lot of trouble occurring in that play. But I feel like her character is almost like in a transitional stage where she's going from badass zero Rebecca to teacher Rebecca that we see later on. You know what I mean? All the while she's doing her best spy routine without being a spy. She's just basically there going, so that professor's doing virology, right? Coy remark, you know. So yeah, I think I liked her. I feel like she was the most true to her previous character. Chris didn't feel much like Chris for me. Piers, although he's like my standout one character I like from Resi 6, didn't feel like Piers. So yeah, I'll give it that for the stage.
That's fair enough. And like you said, there's that moment of weakness that she has where they have to shoot the students that have now become infected. I love that as well because, yeah, it's Rebecca at her core. It kind of, yeah, it's more her moral center, and it even possibly informs the decision that we assume leaves the BSAA after this, or at least in less capacity, moving on in Vendetta and becoming more of a civilian. So, yeah, it's a great little piece in between these two different versions of the character.
Yeah, I mean, what is it? It's Tyler, the side character who's tied to the main big bad. She's the only other character to have like a separate scene with him. So she also is, I would argue, more integral to the plot than even Chris and Piers are, even though they fight the big baddies at the end. So she's got that too.
I do feel like Chris and Piers were kind of shoehorned in. They were just there because they have to put well, I mean, I haven't met Piers yet in the games, but Chris definitely, like, he was just put in there because he was a name, you know, and he needed to go there and be the badass and kill the bad guy.
It's strange because I don't think in the musical they do have any of the big names in it, but I can't remember that well. I know we're talking about the stage and not the musical, but...
Yeah, I don't disagree, actually. Now that you mention it, she actually has, like, plot servicing importance, whereas those two, yeah, they're just thrown in there for the action, shoot the zombie parts. The plot driving characters, for the most part, are all the ones that were written for the stage specifically, and Rebecca. So, and again, I agree with what Steve said. This her being taken hostage is kind of a shame, especially as we're about to move on to Vendetta as well. But I do like that she gets away from it herself, and at the end drops off the rocket launcher for the classic Resi finish.
I did love that bit. I was like, yes, it's Resident Evil. There's a rocket launcher.
There's no countdown though.
Yeah, 2 out of 3. There's no countdown, but there is a rocket launcher and someone that injects themselves with something for no reason. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of which, So Rebecca's most recent appearance is Resident Evil Vendetta. It's the third CGI film. This takes place an unspecified time, but it's sometime after 2013 in the canon. Again, Rebecca is supporting plot kind of character rather than a driving action kind of character, and sees her taking up her new career in the Alexander Institute of Biotechnology, which is in Chicago. In this film, she is portrayed by Erin Cahill. James, how do you feel about Vendetta?
I watched this at Steve's after a heavier recording day, and I really enjoyed it. Actually, it felt like a film version of one of the games, and it was nice to see. Even though it's got my beloved Matt Mercer in it, you guys all know how much I love him. I did feel like there was a little bit of shoehorning there with Leon and Chris. You only need one of them, really. But yeah, back to Rebecca, though. I like that you've gone back to her roots with it, of her basically being the genius, figuring stuff out. See, it was a while ago since I watched it, right? So it's a little bit hazy, but I do remember liking her a lot and saying, being like, it's nice to see a different side of her. Because I watched it before I watched the stage. Because beforehand you see her and she was in Stars or BSAA, and yeah, it's different seeing her in this completely civilian career. Doing her best to counteract it's A virus, was it? I think.
Yes.
Yeah. It was nice to see. Yeah, and I think she acted very well as well. The voice actor was great. The animations were great, and her general mannerisms are all very Rebecca for me.
Absolutely, and I think we've talked before about, or at least off podcasts, Steve and myself, about how we don't get to see enough of just normal situations in the Resident Evil universe, because obviously stuff hits the fan and everything's going crazy. So it's nice at the beginning of this film to see her doing essentially her day job at the Institute, working on all kinds of chemistry stuff, which feeds back into the origin of the character as being the child prodigy. She's literally at the beginning of the film working on a vaccine for a new virus and completes it at the beginning of the film and that kind of stuff. So fits the genius side of the character. Generally, I think this is one of the better portrayals of her, because the character design is really cool, because it's got the recognizable colors, which is a nice little wink and a nod, and it looks like her, but also however many years on from what we're used to seeing her. They did a really good job of realizing this character later into her life, when things have kind of changed and moved on, and things maybe got a little more normal until she gets thrown into the thick of it again. They did a really good job at her. Even stuff like she has the moment where she snaps at Leon and Chris, and then the next scene she's in the bathroom and she just says to herself, "That isn't very nice what she just did." It's like that. Yeah,
it's a great scene though, where she literally just says, "Grow the hell up."
Yeah.
Take it. Yeah, that's Zero Rebecca coming back to like beat. No, someone needs to be authoritative because these children just won't grow up. Yeah,
you do see her in kind of a unique scenario as well, where because she gets infected, doesn't she?
Yeah, right at the start.
Because that's the whole deal. That's the whole thing. And you see her in a unique position where she's literally trying to save her life with her own brains. With her genius. Putting what she's been doing from the beginning to play. And Chris and Leon are just there. But it's really nice to see, because that's kind of unique with her. She's trying to save herself rather than trying to save others.
See, I think looking at Vendetta now, I only watched it recently, but talking through this podcast about every other appearance of her has kind of made me think that she is more of an amalgamation of every single part of her, because you've got the lecturer side, which appears in the stage. You've then got her, shall we say, kind of almost dismissive at first, or more subdued side when Chris initially shows up. Like basically, Chris is here, he can save the day. And then when Chris starts acting like a complete asshat and Leon are both bickering at the table, she then brings these years of college teaching experience to then turn around and, give them a slap upside the head, not physically.
Yeah.
And then she comes back to the stage and gets kidnapped by, is it Glenn Arias?
Yeah. That's the one major falling of this, is getting kidnapped for 2 entries in a row, which is, like I say, maybe Capcom figured nobody cares about the stage, so they don't really mind doing that plot point again.
Yeah.
But for me, it's a shame to see her as damsel in distress twice in a row.
Definitely, 100%. Yeah. I feel like it could have eased. I mean, they would never have gone for it because it's not marketable, but you could have had Chris in that perilous situation. And then, it may be Claire, well, not Claire, but maybe, some of the ladies take control.
That'd be cool.
I would love to have seen Rebecca and Leon have to deal with the situation more so. You know what I'm saying?
That's true. Like, speaking broadly as well, we've already seen Leon and Chris team up together previously in Resident Evil 6. So it would have been nice to have Rebecca paired up with a character that we haven't seen that with. So like Leon and Rebecca, they do get a little bit of screen time together in this, but if they were the lead characters, that would have actually been really interesting.
I'm going to say Leon's very broken in this film post RE6, isn't he? For reasons I can't fully grasp. He's just like, killing zombies doesn't work very well.
Yeah, he has a flashback scene and my platoon died, so now I'm an alcoholic, and then the crowd goes mild because we saw that in Resident Evil 6 with Chris. Don't know why we did that one again with a different character, but there you go.
Yeah. I feel like they could have gone a different direction. It also kind of feels like, because this was around the time Remaster of Zero was coming out, wasn't it? Was Rebecca just there because that was there? I mean, don't get me wrong, I appreciate everything they've done with her. It's just, I don't know.
No, I would doubt that, actually. I think somebody, for what it's worth, and while personally this film is totally ridiculous and there's so much about it that just doesn't fit with Resident Evil, I kind of like it just because of how stupid it is. But someone on that team, obviously, they cared enough about Rebecca, at least, to write her well and make it fit. So props on that side.
There's that exchange on the chopper as well, where there's talk about, so you gave up your gun to become a doctor? Like, well, he fights with his guns, I'm going to fight with my science, essentially, which is nice.
Yeah, it's a nice nod to all of the accomplishments she's had in the previous games.
Yeah, it's a logical point to have her as well, just kind of retiring from the battlefield, because she's not built for it mentally. We've seen that multiple times, that it has too much of a toll on her. So yeah, I'm very happy that they took the character in this direction.
Yeah. When you think of all the mad geniuses in the Resident Evil franchise, they're always about making viruses and things. I suppose it's nice the good guys now have one that can cook up an antivirus in 10 minutes.
Absolutely.
Put in the microwave.
So before we wrap up this main segment, does anybody have any final thoughts on the history of Rebecca Chambers thus far?
Yeah. So Rebecca was born in 1980. Okay. Which means she'll be 30. Yeah, she's 39. Right. She's well within marriable age for me. Okay, so we need to make this happen. No, I think we all know now. You can just tell by my my defense of her throughout this entire podcast. I absolutely love her character. She's one of the strongest side characters I've seen in a game. She's and that's not just Resident Evil, but in a game, she's got so many sides to her, and she's had such a crappy life, bad timing. For everything, and I think that's why I like it so much, because she's just been through so much, and she's pushed through it, and then she's got a career out of it. And unfortunately, the crap keeps following her, but that's what keeps her going. That's seems to be her goal now, is to keep fighting back against the virus or the corporations.
I think for myself, having gone through this history, just discussing it now, I feel like I'm reshuffling my internal, favorites deck. She's definitely my favorite Stars member.
Wow.
Because, not to be cruel to Jill and Chris, they are a bit blank slatey.
Yeah.
Chris has a bit more character in 5 and 6, but overall he's very blank slatey. Jill has been MIA since Resident Evil Revelations, technically, and in that she was about as animated as cardboard. So, yeah. Whereas Rebecca's got depth, she's got flaws. She's not, as we've said, she's not a superhero. She's more human than the rest of them, and that makes her a lot more appealing. So yeah, I'll give her that.
I think it's interesting because it's, as we talked about the issues almost with her character in terms of slotting stuff together with Zero in the original game and stuff. Even all that aside, she is the most consistently well-written character, especially touching on those later entries that kind of tie all those character elements up. She's definitely one of the strongest characters in the franchise, which is funny because this is why I mentioned, some people found her to be annoying in the original game, but overall, she's definitely one of the best characters.
Yeah, definitely the least inconsistent, whereas there are some that deviate wildly as the series goes on.
Yeah, and I think whilst it's easy to ask to see more from her and more appearances from her, what we've got out of her has kept her that really consistent character as well. So with all of that being said, let's move on to our bite-sized discussion segment this week. So our bite-sized discussion this week comes from Adam Schwartz, aka TireMattZX. He actually emailed this in several months ago now when we started the show without even knowing that we were going to do a Rebecca-centric episode. So I said to him, hold on to that one and we'll get to it when we get to it. So he asks, how would you feel if they did finally reintroduce Rebecca in the series in a scenario that makes her the main character? For instance, an incident that occurs on the 20th anniversary of either the mansion incident or the Raccoon City incident itself. Mr. Owlette, would you like to take this one first?
Oh boy. I mean, I would love it. Yeah, definitely. As long as they just keep to what they've been doing, keeping her character design, keeping her attitude how it is, not deviating at all. I would really, really dislike it if they turned her into a bad person, if she became a mad scientist like all the rest of them have, right? It just that I normally like that kind of stuff, but it seems cliche with her. Like, she's been through so much. Why would she just turn bad after doing all that? I know they haven't done it, but I've really thought that they're actually going to do this at some point. So yeah, I'd be completely down for it. I would love more Rebecca games, please. More.
Steve, what are your thoughts?
Now you mention it, James, I'm just thinking, because we've never had a Resident Evil hero go bad or go rogue yet.
Please don't, Steve.
Please
don't say that.
Not to the beloved Rebecca Chambers, okay? I'm totally on Team Rebecca on this one. All right? I feel like they could do a Revelations game with it. I feel like we need we don't need, but I would like a game where we see maybe the events between the stage and Vendetta, something that prompts her to go from being this BSAA antiviral research specialist to go, you know what, I'm hanging up my gun, I'm going to just go teach, I'm going to just do some research, peace out, I'm done with this murdering business or fighting these monsters. I want to see a game where someone goes through an experience so harrowing and they can show they're done with this, that they're done. And Rebecca will be the perfect character for it because she's the most human out of the lot of them. And the whole 20th anniversary of Raccoon City thing we have. The Resident Evil universe is a rather strange one. We have sky lasers. We have viruses that can turn people into giant monstrosities. We also have artificial cities. So 20 years on, I'm pretty sure the thermobaric nuclear blast radiation, a lot of Raccoon City's gone. Let's build a city on top of it. And really unfortunate second circumstances. And then Rebecca's in the middle of that, like a Raccoon City 2. Why not? That sounds fun to me.
Maybe so. Yeah, why not? There is much you can do with it at this point. Like, if you carried on after Vendetta, you can have her appear in any fashion, even if it's an advisory role or something like that. She's very well suited to a Revelations 3 if they were to ever make it. And yeah, you could slot that between the stage and Vendetta as well. Honestly, there's a nice big gap there between Resident Evil and the stage as well. There's 12 years there that you could tell some BSAA stories with her, how she got involved with them or something else, some remote incident somewhere. We've talked before about the possibility of them ever making a fixed camera game again, which I think, honestly, don't hold your breath. But if it would ever happen, You could do it with Rebecca. I don't see why not. I feel that would be quite nice in a way that, like, Zero being the last game of those styles, if they were to ever do a throwback, it'd be cool to have her in the next one as well. And an isolated incident really works for her character. So I don't think that'll ever happen. But it would be nice.
What was the scene in the stage? What was the scene in the stage? It was like Minnesota, was it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you could do a game based on that, really.
Yeah, you could do. Why not?
Yeah, that's dead in those years.
I'm also interested to like you said, Sai, what happens between Resident Evil and the stage. What happened in those years? I'd be really interested in that.
There's a lot you can do, and I think we're all in favour of them doing something. Just being careful, I guess. Right.
I laugh if they put her in Resi 3. I know that sounds strange, but I laugh at it because she's literally been AWOL for this long. They could easily put a how she gets out of the Raccoon City thing as like a forced survivor, couldn't she?
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm going into what if town.
Yeah, you're not wrong, really.
Because she's been AWOL. Do we know how she left the city? Do we have any definitives on that?
No, I don't think there's any. Honestly, everything that we've talked about today, I'm pretty sure is the entirety of like the information that there is to give. Like there is just complete swaths of nothing after Resident Evil and before the stage, with the exception of the St. Cloud incident you just mentioned.
Can we just be thankful then that they didn't do the traditional kill off an established character thing for Resident Evil 3 and it was Rebecca instead of Brad, because that would have been heartbreaking.
Ooh.
Yes, it would have.
Yeah, I am glad that Rebecca was not in Brad's place.
Indeed.
Sod Brad. Right. Sorry, what? Huh? Steve's ranting again. Sorry. Right, yeah, but you get my point.
Right, well, nothing else remains for me but to thank our contributors. If you'd like to be part of the show, then please look into auditioning for our file readings. One way to get in touch is to email us at faspraypod@gmail.com. But of course, the best course of action is to join our Discord server, where you can also ask questions for the Bitesize Discussion, discuss Resident Evil with us and other fans, and listen to the podcast live as it's being recorded. The link to the server is in the description of this podcast and also on our social media profiles. You can follow us on Twitter at FASprayPod, on Instagram at FASprayPod, and on Facebook at facebook.com/FASprayPod. You can find the podcast on YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, and if you've enjoyed the show, please do leave us an iTunes review if you can. It helps spread the word. Our next episode will be going back to the Spencer Mansion, but not in the way that you remember it. We'll be looking at Resident Evil Deadly Silence for the DS. Thank you to the panel. You can follow us all individually. I'm at Psyniac_123. Steve is at FireButtonsGame. And James is at Moist Owlette OFF. And finally, thank you all for listening and have a good week.
I really want to play with Steve on Resident Evil 5 as co-op because it's going to be really funny because I will just be screaming. That will be mostly it. Me just running around screaming, saying, "Save me the shotgun shells." And Steve will be yelling back, "No."
It's okay. You can have the shotgun shells. The shotguns are only really okay in RE5, at least for me.
Are they Ada Wong DLC bad?
Oh no. And to be fair, that shotgun has its uses. It's more of a knock them down and leg it kind of gun than an actual kill them out, right?
Yeah, but you're playing Resident Evil 4. You don't leg it. You have to kill everything.
Well, that's one way you could play it.
What? This is Sekiro?
Oh, right. Okay. I like it. Si's basically got his own live little reenactment of fucking Let's Play stuff now.
It's true. What podcast?